to see my sister Marcella, all the way from the US, with that bright and cheerful smile. And also Olabambo Akidaunsi, who always gives me a lot of encouragement when I see her on the platform. She's we need to give her a prize for our most regular, great supporter. But we haven't seen a check from you recently, Sha, so I know one will soon come. Always there, always there. She refuses to come on the platform though, but you have to come on the platform, Bambo. Thank you for really being part of this story. Prof, you are most welcome today. Our guest is Professor of African and African American Studies at Harvard University, the most prestigious university perhaps in the world, apart from my university in Okaigbe. Okay, and he's Professor of African Religion. Okay, maybe you want me to say University in Okigbo, but Okaigbe is the one we're pushing today, not Okigbo. Professor of African Religion at the Harvard Divinity School. He attended the University of Nigeria, Nsukka in 1975, Boston University, where he earned his MA and PhD in History of Religions in 1983, was born into the family of Venerable Michael Olupono from Ute, and Henrietta Olupono Ni Aderemi from the great Okigbo. Okay, that is our Forest Hill. That's what's otherwise known as Forest Hill, Okigbo, which incidentally is where my mother comes from, and thereby Professor Olupono and myself are second cousins. He attended Boluji Grammar School, Eluji, and did his NYC at Ilorin in 1975, taught at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ilefe, 1976 to 1990. And prior to Harvard, he was professor at the University of California, Davis, 1991 to 2006, and so on and so forth. He has published several books, several journals, is extremely very, very well known, very renowned. Recently, he had a great appointment, okay, and is married to Modupe Olupono, and they have 4 children. And he began a few years ago the Ife Summer Institute as a convener, and I am a director on the board of that institute, or at least I still think I am on that board. And I'm going to, because this is Nigeria, things move very fast. So I'm going to Prof to tell us a little bit more about that institute during the course of the program and make it known to us. Also, during the course of the program, we'll be having some announcements. We're talking about education and national development. Prof, can you please give us your own thoughts and your own thinking on the state and level of education in Nigeria and how you think it has affected our development here or there, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you very much for agreeing to be on this program in spite of your very busy schedule.
Thank you, cousin Itua Ighodalo. It's quite an honor to be here and to have the chance to talk about a topic that I believe is very dear to my heart, both in terms of my scholarship and practice. I'm concerned with 2 broad areas of interest, religion and education. And today we want to talk about education. First of all, let me inform you that even though I am in America and people often would describe me as a member of the diaspora, and I am, the truth of the matter is that I'm also there in Nigeria with you. I make sure I understand what is going on. I try to, and I participated in the conversation relating to education. And I've had the chance to give lectures, convocation addresses, and so on and so forth. The truth of the matter is that the state of education, I would say, is not the best. I also want to say very clearly that I am not one of the Nigerians who think that everything that is outside good, everything inside within the country is not good. I don't share that. I believe that even within the state of education that we are not too happy. It is also the case that there are best practices all over the place. And my thesis and theory is that we need to focus on all this and use it in rebuilding the educational system, rather than think that the best approach is to come abroad, go to Britain, and go to America and Europe in general, and bring the plans to rebuild Nigeria educational system. I do not believe in that. So if we say that what is the state level of education, and we are all saying to ourselves and to the nation and the state that it is not the best. So what do we mean by that? And what are the parameters that we are using to assess the state of education? And while I agree that making comparison is important, the purpose of that will be to let us know how others are also thinking about education in their own different sectors, and what we can learn from that. The first thing I want to say is that we have to take seriously the agenda of nation building. And that's why the topic, education and national development, is important. So if we are focusing on education and we do not even know why it is important to do so, and the kinds of education we are talking about, not to talk of the process, then would have failed even in understanding the depth of this problem. All over the world, in important countries and places, people just do not throw open their spheres and say that, look, you go ahead and do whatever you want to do. And then you call it, this is a school, this is the educational system, and so on. You have to know what you are doing and why what you are doing is important, not only to the people that are concerned, the stakeholders, but also in the national interest. Nigeria is a country, it's not a nation, we all agree, but we want Nigeria to become a nation. So education also is going to help us reach that goal. So that means that in teaching and learning, we must know what we are doing. We also have to realize that nation building is not a natural process. People have to work to make it happen. After they have agreed on the basic parameters and the basic thing they want to achieve, we want to make sure that we achieve the goal of national development, that we promote a lot of things, including values, kinds of working towards a pluralistic system, but that allows us to be unified in pursuing our purpose and our goal as a nation. So it means then that we must be able to inculcate in the students at the elementary, the secondary, and even the university level, those values that are germane to this country or to the nation that we have in mind. So that at the end of it, we are proud of it. We believe we are Nigerians, irrespective of all other ethnic identities we may carry, even including religion. I'm a Christian, I'm a Yoruba, I'm a Nigerian. I think all these things are fine. But ultimately, the goal of becoming a Nigerian is important. And we must realize that the educational system must be structured in such a way that it will make this attainable. So I'm trying to lay out maybe some of these basic philosophical ideas that should propel us towards that. So in other words, if we begin to develop curricula that will not serve this purpose, then we know that we are making grievous mistake. The second thing is that we must also be able to give to them the kinds of resources, the students, that will make them to become educated men and women in the community, not ignorant men and women, who will be able to decide for themselves what they believe are good, to maintain a good life after they had finished. So most of the time when we talk about education, we talked about job creation. We have laid too much emphasis on paper certificate. So much so that we are not doing even the children and the students that we teach mentoring any good by doing that. The idea of exposing them to those values, the skills that are necessary, that will help them, in fact, even create jobs for themselves when they have finished. It's a problem in the system. The other part of it is that we put people in charge of different spheres of education that should not really be there. If you're putting people who are not qualified, and you're doing that on the basis of the fact that you want to make sure that their constituency is well represented in the sectors, then we have a problem with that. So we must stop deceiving ourselves in Nigeria because we know what is going on. And I believe that there are ways out. If we have the political will to make things happen. We are aware that a lot of youths are leaving the country. I think, is it, you people call it, is it Jackpot, what do you call it? I have been is an interesting slang, but whoever coined it should be, I think, it should be recognized, nationally recognized, because it's a very appropriate word. So we all need to find out that by now, a serious country would have put in place a body, maybe a small number of people to think about it, to find out how best to stop that. And then the idea that the folks who are training at home, in the universities, in the high schools and so on, when they leave and they get out of Nigeria, they do very well. Come to America here, go to the hospitals, go to the universities. Who are the people doing the job there? They're Nigerians. The best and the brightest are Nigerians here. Not just because they're blacks, but, in the midst of nations in there. So then there's something wrong with, what we're doing at home. So the education system must be structured in such a way not only to take seriously national development, but also to make sure it has within it checks and balances that will not lead to some of these crises. Lastly, let me also mention that we cannot discuss education in isolation. Development is tied to a lot of things, not just education. Health is important. The questions of creation of infrastructures to have good roads and so on. You know, I don't want to be very emotional about this, because I have had tragedies. You know, one when a cousin of mine, or the son of a cousin, was trying to go to UK for a master's degree and had an accident on his way to the airport and almost paralyzed. How do you deal with that? There are cases like that. I just mentioned one. So what kinds of systems you get? So I'm saying that because I just mentioned earlier that even the state of the infrastructures in the country is so terrible. It's linked to, you know, education. So we have to have then a holistic approach to national development, and education is central. And lastly, the budget that the state gives to education is very, very low compared with other, even African countries. In most countries, a substantial percentage of the national budget is devoted to education because they know fully well that that is the place to go. That is going to be the driver of national development. And they do not joke with it. In our case, we do not do that. And even when we do that, the little money that is earmarked to education is distributed in very, you know, pretty lopsided ways, because the politicians have to get their own cut. And this is a problem. We have become a nation that is not at times capable of telling ourselves the truth about who we are, what we represent, where we want to go, where we are coming from. If not for these Nigerians who are all over the world, who are doing very well, we have been given a bad name. But because as Nigerians, we are so endowed with a lot of qualities. We have confidence in ourselves. In Nigeria, we walk around the streets or walk to a library or into a shop, and people will know that this is not just a Black person. This is a Nigerian. So this has helped us somehow to, to get on in life. I also want to mention that we have allowed religion, particularly Christianity and Islam, forms of Christianity and Islam, to hijack what should be a proper educational experiment as a result of religious identities and so. Are we the first to be Christian or to be a Muslim in the world? There are top Muslim countries who are doing very well. They do not joke with education. When it comes to our own thing, it's a problem. So why is it so? Lastly, I can go on and on, but lastly, I just want to mention one more important issue. And that is the nature of the training we also give. What proposes a European and English-based intellectual life that defines our whole existence in terms of the epistemology, knowledge base, and even the ontology itself is a serious crisis for us. And when we say that we need to go back to the basics, to the tradition, we are not asking you to go and convert to Yoruba or Igbo religion or Efik religion. That's what I'm saying here. I know people have used that sometimes ago to say, oh, Professor, the son of an Anglican Ajikin is asking us to become Ifa devotees and so on. That's what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that if you continue to base your educational system and the kinds of knowledge that you are imparting to your youth on a wrong model, a European English-based intellectual life and models, then you're making a big mistake. And this affects all spheres of life. It's not just in education, even in health and healing and so on and so forth. I think, Pastor, I should just stop here. If you don't mind, I can still say more, but I leave that.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. I picked up a few things from what you were saying, and I'd like you to see if you can drill deeper. Number one, why do you think Nigeria's educational system has gone this way? You know, I was listening to something earlier on today, and the person was saying that in the 60s or so, Malaysia, Singapore, China, even India got aid and so on and so forth from even Germany after the World War, and even they got aid, you know. But how is it that they've been able to manage themselves that now they are the ones giving out aid, whereas Africa is still queuing up for aid from Western nations? What I'm trying to say is that why do you think Nigerian educational system has gone the way it has, when Awolowo started introducing free education as far back as 1953, 1954, 1955, thereabouts, and so on and so forth? How come we're seeming so far behind?
How much did you give me?
That we have Olu, put your that we have almost 20 million children out of school, and so on and so forth. What do you think it is? The second question I have, so that I don't keep butting in and out, is you mentioned that Nigeria is a country and not a nation.
Yes.
Why are we not yet a nation, and what do we need to do to become a nation? So those are the two questions I have.
Yeah, thank you. I quickly respond to that. I used to teach a class here, Introduction to African Studies and One Religion, Society and Culture in Nigeria. And I was fond of using a kind of a clip of a video, the visit of the first Prime Minister to US, Prime Minister Balewa, in 1960, when he visited US. And the entire US came out to welcome him, and he gave a speech, impeccable English. And then I will ask the students to comment on it. And then I'll tell them that this man did not have a first degree. He went to a teacher's training college. Speaking Queen's English, he was in command of the whole place. America respected him, and by that also respected Nigeria. Now, you take it from there, from that time till now, and look at the state of this nation and the types of leaders we have produced. How did we get here? So this is a reflection of, of who we are from that period to the current situation. With due respect to, President Buhari, we need to ask ourselves, we need to examine the process of how we choose our leaders. Because the leaders have so much power to determine who gets what. So that's one thing, one way of looking at that. In other words, we have, instead of moving forward, we've been moving backward, right? So how are we going to correct this? The second thing I want to say is that we are practicing a form of political system and structure called federalism that doesn't work. We call it federalism, but we do not practice it. Let me put it that way. Federalism allows you to live and let live. It allows for the kinds of competition that we used to see in those days. Don't forget that when the first sets of Nigerian universities were established, there was a kind of a common exam that they used to do. I think about Ibadan, Lagos, Ahmadu Bello, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And Nsukka came first, I think, for the first 6 years. By the way, you know I went to University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Because there was this healthy competition, a healthy rivalry. And the caliber of graduates that we were producing was such that they were the best in the world. So the military also came to hijack this experiment. I'm sorry, I have nothing much to say about that. You probably know what happened. So the military came in and the intervention wasn't too good for Nigeria. So I can add to that. So the questions of leadership is important. The intervention of the military that led us to all these kinds of trouble, the trouble that we have not been able to overcome. And lastly, I will add the second question, that Nigeria is not a nation, it's a geographical entity. We can define the boundaries, but we have not even been able to maintain the boundaries very well, because people just move around and roam around the whole place. So that's an issue. How do we then become a nation? Let me repeat what I said earlier on and be very clear. That nation building is not a natural process. People have to work towards making it a nation. That means that even when we are talking about our tragedies, say the military coups that led to the death of a lot of people, I was reading in the paper, I think 2-3 days ago, and someone just mentioned that, why is it that Adekunle Fajuyi is not remembered by Nigerians, given the kinds of sacrifice that he made? During the counter coup, you know the story I'm trying to tell. Why is it that even in southwestern Nigeria, where he came from, he was the governor of this region, Adekunle Fajuyi is not remembered? It was quite interesting to me, because just last month, a couple of people visited my house, and I asked them, who was Fajuyi? They didn't know that. So Nigerians do not even know their own history. The military deliberately remove history from the curriculum because they do not want to know our past and our present, so that we will not be able to fight for our future. I know history is now resolved, but it's not just symbolic restoration of history, but understanding of history, and to know that nations are built on the basis of their knowledge of who they are, their space, their geography, their culture, and so on and so forth. And that, in fact, in the nation building experiment or project we're talking about, even the role of theater, the role of dance, the role of music, materialism, and so on and so forth, that are used by others to build a nation. And then, of course, there must be a kind of an ideological drive. When I returned to US in 1990, my son, the last one, went to primary school. And he came back one day, and this is very important, and I would like all of us to listen to this. And I saw him reciting something, "Give me liberty or give me death." Oh, I said, "Oh boy, what are you talking about?" Then he repeated it. Then I found out that in the lecture, I think the civics class, they teach them these values, how to love their country, to understand that liberty and freedom are very essential to the existence of America. By the way, I'm not one of the Nigerians who think that America or no other place. No. I'm just saying to you some of the things that I then it took me some time to now understand the basis of the greatness of this country called America. It's a kind of indoctrination that is allowed, that we enable the youth and the children to love their country, to understand that. But in exchange for that, leaders must be honest. You can't be teaching them to be honest and be teaching them to love their countries, and you, those of you who are in charge, are just deceiving the masses. It's not going to work. So it's a collective effort, and we must all work towards that. Even religion has a role to play in that. But where we have religious traditions that feel that they are greater than the nation, this is very important, that they are greater than the entities that we're talking about, we are not going to get the nation we are talking about. I hope I've cleared these two questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that. What do you then think we should do, first of all, to try and wield Nigeria into a nation? What can we do, and if we can granulate it even to what individuals can do, and is it even possible to wield this country into a true nation? And then following on from that, what should we do to our educational system to try and make it what it really should be, and a basis for nation building?
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree with you that individuals and groups do have important roles to play in it. And that's why I mentioned the church, the mosque, Islamic groups, and so on. We all have important roles to play in that, in in nation building. Not only is it necessary for all these groups to promote values that will recognize the importance of the country, its place in history, and then to also be able to reinterpret its history in such a way that they will give hope to the young ones and know that all is not lost. We can't continue to paint a negative picture of Nigeria and expect that Nigeria will get out of this problem. So individuals have a role to play there. The other thing I want to also emphasize is that we do not pay attention to popular cultures that do have important ingredients of nation building. I don't know if you remember a song. There's a song I used to listen to. It's a Yoruba song. I don't remember who says, in my house, in my town, in my place, I want to be an Alatunse, the one who brings people together, the one who brings people, the one who rebuilds. And it says, Nigeria, I will always and continuously look for what? Your progress. It's a very important song, even though it's in Yoruba. It should be translated to other languages so that people will listen and reflect, and reflect on that. The other part of it is that individuals must sit and recognize that they are also citizens of this nation, and they have something to protect, and they have something to be proud of. It's important for us to know that. And then the role of the family. The role of the family. I remember when we came back to US in 1990, we made it important for our children to speak our language, Yoruba language. Knowing fully well that it's important for you to inculcate the kinds of values you have in mind through the use of the language. So we'll speak, and then they speak. Now, they're the ones who are anxious to speak Yoruba to us at all times. At times when I'm talking and I dive into Yoruba, they would bring me back to it again. So the family is important in this experiment. And now coming to the educational system, how do we reform it? Look, if it is possible for us to gather together all the reports that we have been, the reports of some of the meetings and the probes and whatever that we have on education, it will fill a whole library, okay? A whole library. We are very good at doing that, but we're not good at taking action and making things happen. I remember Jonathan's Education Summit. I came from US to attend it, where important decisions were made on how to reform Nigerian educational system. In fairness to the president, he acted on some of the suggestions we made. It was there we suggested to him that he should also appoint vice chancellors from the diaspora, and he did. A lot of things happened. Some of the other things we recommended, they did not, take action on that. So by going back to the federalist system I mentioned earlier on, we will be able to bring back some of these old practices that allow for competition among the institutions. My school, Boluji Anglican Grammar School in Ileluji, you probably know where Ileluji is, Pastor. It's not too far from Okigbo there. I was raised there. We are going to turn 70 next year. We are getting ready to do our, anniversary. I know that my wife's school, too, St. Louis Secondary School, a Catholic school in Ondo, is also going to be 70 next year. They are busy planning and trying to get things done in preparation for this celebration. We need to get the alumni involved in the restructuring of our schools. We need to recognize that we are too dependent on the government, on the state. We want the state and the government to do everything. It's not possible. This is part of the problem. We have actually said to them, hey, you are the controller of our lives, so do it the way you like. And this is why we are in this mess. So let's try to correct that. And then at the federal level, please plead with those who are there to put people who know what they are doing in charge of the different sectors and different sectors of education in Nigeria. Maybe if we do all these things, then we can talk about some more rudimentary issues like salaries and so. I mean, you know what the professors are earning in the university. For God's sake, what about the teachers who are teaching our students in the secondary school, who are earning 20 to 30,000 naira a month? What do you want them to do with it? So, but the bottom line thing, Pastor, is that we have to become a nation that is willing to speak truth to power, not only that, but also that is willing to be critical of what we are doing, not because we do not love Nigeria, but because we want the change that is needed. Like you write the statistics about what is happening in the world today and how we have almost degenerated to a certain level that is not too good is quite is very important and quite insightful. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm just going to ask you one or two more questions. Then maybe my colleagues, Pastor Sonny and Jumoke, might have one or two things. And then the floor open for questions and answers. And then maybe you can also speak to the foundation in Ile-Ife along the line. The question is, I don't know how much of the last elections you were part of or you observed. I'd like to hear your opinion of how you think that election went and what you feel the outcomes were and what you are thinking this new government that has been put in place is going to be able to produce for Nigeria, or if you have some advice for them, and then maybe you then want to speak to whatever else you need to say on education and nation building. If you have any other thoughts that we've not expressed, maybe you want them to go ahead and express those ones. But I'd like to get your opinion on what you think of the last elections.
Well, Pastor, if you don't mind, I would like to avoid these whole questions of Nigerian election. I was not in the country, but I can talk about what I would like to see in terms of where do we go from here once they kind of decide on what they want to do. Because I recognize that we have borrowed the Constitution from America, that we have not really been faithful to. Pastor, you are aware that one of the reasons why Nigeria came to this place was to find something that we could use from a country that has some very similar cultural characteristics and traits to Nigeria. But we came and took what we liked, and in fact inflicted a lot of things. Where in the world do senators and people of the House get the kinds of salaries and money that we're paying them? Tell me the other country in the world where senators and members of the House are paid that kinds of huge money and the teachers are suffering in the primary and the secondary schools. What kind of country is this? That's why I'm saying to you that asking me to talk about election and this thing, I don't. We have to really face the truth about ourselves. Have we asked the question, what kind of people want to kill themselves over elections to a House or representatives or even to be president or whatever it is? Is it not because the stakes are very high? And why are we deliberately being untruthful about ourselves and about the country, thinking that this is the way to go? So my suggestion would be that we need to look at this educational sector and put in place things that will help us to move forward. One is that we must continue to emphasize the importance of public education. While private universities are fine and private education is fine, they are not substitute for public education and public system. And let me just give the examples of the University of California system, where I used to be before coming to Harvard. I was at the University of California, Davis, for 16 years. Before coming to Harvard in 2006, so I've spent 17 years at Harvard. University of California system, particularly UC Berkeley and UCLA, are top-rate universities that can compete with Harvard or any university in the world, irrespective of who is in charge in terms of the state, whether it's Republican or Democrats. They don't touch it. They will give them all the resources that are needed, because they're like, the universities are like national treasures. We need to develop that kinds of attitude so that we will be able to see how important education is. Because we have produced, like you said, even graduates who are not employable, and even those who do not have jobs. We have not really done well in that. The second thing I want to say is that while we focus on the university education, we also have to look at the primary and the secondary as zones and places where this nation building experiment I just mentioned should be based, so that the starting points of nation building in terms of the role of education in it must focus on that. And last thing is to state that the autonomy that is necessary for the states to grow must be given to them. But the current structures we have now is not in favor of that. There must be a national meeting. All the stakeholders must come together and determine what they want for themselves. And if they don't want this republic to continue, let them say it. Why do we have to be living in tension? Anytime there's an election, there's a crisis. At the state level, at the national level, it's as if we are almost forced into a relationship that is not working. We need to talk about it. We need to debate it and determine what we want for ourselves. So that's why at times I see the debate and conversations about election and so on and so forth as almost unproductive, because there are all going to be arguments back and forth in defending or debunking one position or the other. And if I should talk about the project at IFE, I'll first of all say that 7 years ago, it occurred to some of us at home and abroad that we need a kind of intervention in the educational system. We need to put in place a way to help in encouraging the young scholars, both at the pre and the postdoctoral level, to know what it means to be even an academic. So we mobilized scholars from abroad. They joined their colleagues at home to institute a 2-week summer institute. First of all, it was in the social sciences and the humanities, but it's now, we also have science, have STEM. We tried to train them 2 weeks, and after that, we also continue to mentor them. We are getting good results. It's a clear case of an intervention that is working. The good result, of course, will show in their performances in their respective universities, in their performances in those places that invite them to come as fellows, Oxford, Cambridge, University of Michigan, and different parts of the world, where they have the opportunity to spend 3 months, 6 months to write books, to write articles. So we have achieved that to such an extent that it has become so important and known to scholars all over the continent and even outside Nigeria that people Africa that they want to come. So the issue we're dealing with now is how to get the resources to be able to do more. So through this process, we created what we call the Institute for Advanced Studies, based in IFE, but it's an African thing with global interest and connections and relationship. I can see that some of the professors who are involved in the work, with us here. Professor Tayo Adeshina is here. Dr. Oweye, who is a member, is also here. And there are lots of the fellows who graduated from there and who have really done well for themselves and will credit the Institute for the opportunities they were given. I mention this because these are interventions. These are interventions that are necessary to move the system forward. And because we are not designed to give certificates in terms of the masters and the PhDs, we try as much as possible to avoid that. We lay less emphasis on paper certificate. We lay emphasis in skill acquisition. That's what we're teaching them. And they have done very well with the kinds of knowledge we have succeeded in, in impacting to the fellows. I can still say more if we have time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. There's a small video that we wanted to play. We will play that now. And maybe I'll take a comment or a question on that video that I'd like you to see if Jumoke can play it. And then I'll hand over to Jumoke and co to take it on from there. Thank you very much, sir. Jumoke, can we play that video?
You're welcome.
Yes, good evening, sir. Thank you for coming on the program. If you can just give me a minute, I'm queuing it up and then we can play. But in the meantime, we have some links in the chat that we would like people to just please complete the form we have in the chat if you're interested in engaging with ALG. And I have one question, sir, while I'm queuing this video. My question is this: what is the role of the civil society organization in reforming education in Nigeria? I think that you had mentioned that we can't wait for the government to do everything. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on what the civil society can do for the educational reforms in Nigeria. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I can quickly answer that. The civil society and societies or whatever have a very important role to play. And they're already playing it. I'm aware that quite a number of the civil society have also transformed into creating educational systems, schools and structures to train, young minds to respond to some of the challenges I mentioned earlier on. Some do have schools, and they're doing their parts. I'm familiar, for example, with Madam Rapo, who has also been very central to some of the things we are doing in the Institute for Advanced Studies, and but at the same time, I think they also have to play important role in nation building, as I mentioned earlier on, maybe through education. Not only are they in a position to develop programs and activities that will help in encouraging the youth to do what is necessary, but also help them in making sure that they are well positioned to see themselves as true citizens of this country. So yeah, let's listen to the video.
Thank you.
Yeah.
After the Second World War, so was Japan, so was South Korea, so was Malaysia, or even famous Singapore. They all received aid. But there's something special about them, which is they all, without exception, graduated from being aid recipients within 20 years. By the time those 20 years were over, they were actually giving aid to other people.
Yeah.
But Africa, 60 years later, Africans are negotiating on a global stage the next form of aid they think they want to be getting. Why is it that we are not able to graduate from aid? In the past, we used to blame colonialists, but today, the threat to African economies or destruction of African economies by Africans, the sabotage of our own economies by Africans is on the rise. And I think that we cannot keep making the same mistakes and expecting different outcomes or better results. We need to get our act together. I think it's possible for Africa to rise. but it won't do so until we get organized and we work differently.
Thank you very much, sir. The man made a few, that's the guy who spoke about aid and all that. Now I remember where I got that from. But he spoke something about how Africans seem to be sabotaging their own economies one way or the other. Do you agree with that statement, Prof? And
of course. Your brothers and sisters, sorry, I don't mean your personal brother and sister, I mean Nigerians. You don't know what they do in Europe and America. The money that they should be using in creating jobs here, in employing, there's millions of youths who are roaming around the whole thing. What do they do with the money? Huh? What do they do with this money? They're using that to develop Europe and to develop America. This is not new. Don't forget that quite a number of the African leaders stuck money in Switzerland, and the money became, the money was returned to the state after their demise. Because, of course, they had secret codes that they did not even share with their wives and their children. We know that. Not only that, what about all the monies that we keep recovering from Europe that the military leaders and so on and so forth took and stored in America and Europe and even in Arab countries? So in other words, this is obvious. There is nothing new in that. It looks like a lecture I often give in my class, the class Religion, Society and Culture in Nigeria. I kind of make a introduction. I say, I know that several of you are Nigerians and you care so much about Nigeria that please forgive me. I am not going to be soft on my people. So if you feel offended, let's meet to talk, because I am going to be very blunt and say the way I see it. So the video, the assessment of the state of the continent and Nigeria is correct. So the question is, how do we get out of it? How do we make Africans and Nigerians to love their country? How do we make it? How do we stop the habit? It's almost like it's more than just a habit. It's becoming ontologically a way of being. The idea that you want the poor person on your street to know that he or she is poor, and you are the only rich man around. It has become a part of life. And unfortunately, these values and things are also taken to the religious institutions. So to be able to, we are dealing with a serious crisis that is not going to be easy to fix. We can fix it, but we must all agree that we are ready to fix the problem. Because what is going on is that some of those who are pursuing the best practices are often punished for even being the honest one among us. Don't we have names for senators that are able to do their best or who are being truthful? We have names for them. Members of their own family, we even hate them. In the past, in the villages, if you went to Lagos, which is the capital of Nigeria, and you stole money and bring this money, they will burn your house. They'll say, no. This is not us. We don't do that here. Now they are celebrated and given chieftaincy titles. So in other words, we know what the issues are. And I believe we should be in a position to, correct both our past and also our present. So I agree with you. The guy is correct, but it's not an easy job to do, because we also know that it's difficult to even get political appointments. And once you get the political appointments, you have to give money back to those who put you there. But we're in a position to also work on that, to change the course of our lives and our history.
All right, Sonny, I don't know if you have any questions for Prof. and Jumoke. Go ahead. Jumoke, you have some announcements?
Yeah, I believe Pastor Sonny stepped out, but he'll be right back. So he's not on right now.
Okay, you go ahead, Jumoke, please.
Okay. So last week, we tried to launch the poll for the Nigeria Project Challenge and had technical glitches. So we have a form now in the chat room that we are asking everyone to please take a few minutes to complete. The Project Nigeria Challenge are 10 components, and we're trying to get everyone's input on the areas of priority that ALG would be taking on. So please take a few minutes to answer. It's about to answer the questions in the form. It's you selecting the 3 top priorities that you think are very important towards nation building. And also, if you can, identify the task that you think would help us deliver those projects. So I've put that in the chat. Thank you. Mr. President, do you want to take questions now? We already have one hand up.
Yeah, go ahead and take those questions.
Okay. Mr. Tunde, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, sir. Can I thank you for all the efforts and what you have said so far about the Nigerian educational system? What I want to ask you is not me asking you. I just want you to respond to people who are saying that the educational system in Nigeria should be taught in our vernacular. So like the science textbooks should be converted to Yoruba or to Ijaw, Igbo, Hausa before they can be taught to Nigerians. I mean, how will you respond to people who are saying those English should be eradicated and then we should be teaching ourselves in Yoruba, in Hausa, in Igbo, or in Ijaw, Edo, or whatever it is? How will you respond to people who are saying that?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good question. I don't know if you were here or you listened when I told you that we speak Yoruba in my house. I speak Yoruba to my children, and we speak Yoruba as a must. To show how unserious we are as a country, all we have to do is to look at what happened at Ife during the time of Professor, what's the name of the professor? Was Professor Fafunwa, was the professor of education, and how they performed experiments and taught students. They used the primary school as a demonstration school. In Yoruba language, they translated some of the texts into Yoruba, and it was a successful experiment that even UNESCO liked and so on. But shortly after that, there was no follow-up. One's traditional language is very important because that is what allows you to express yourself adequately well. It is connected to the thought system, and the other language that you learn in the course of that, they are secondary, maybe languages that come, and they are not substitute for the native language. In our case, we have made European and English-based intellectual life our priority and our system that doesn't allow us to understand that. And let me also tell you that I don't feel even comfortable reading using English Bible. When I have to use it, I use it, but then I revert back to Yoruba Bible to have a deep or deeper understanding of the text. I do, Bible studies here. I'm invited to speak to my group, and I do not hesitate to refer to the Yoruba Bible when I am talking, to give them, to make sure they understand the text. I just give that as an example. There's no reason why we should be debating it. The fact that we are talking about it here is an indication of the crisis that we are faced with. I also do not want to stop at language. I also want to talk about, by extension, other systems of life, other forms of our being. Take what I now call indigenous psychiatry. I am doing some research, secretly doing some research in Iloluji, the town where I grew up, talking to a 96-year-old medicine man. And what I am getting and what we are recording is just unbelievable. He knew Professor Lambo. If those of you who are, old enough to know what happened then, Professor Lambo was not only trained in Western psychiatry, he was also very knowledgeable in indigenous psychiatry. And he did a lot. But I'm not sure if they continued the experiment that he created in Arrow Mental Hospital. Until we now turn back to these basics and begin to use our own thought system, which is expressed in our language, we are not going to make it. Communication is very important. I don't know how many of you remember the time when there was a governor, I think was it Oyakilome, or who was the governor of Port Harcourt, who, when he got there, decided that he was going to use Pidgin English, because we wanted to speak to the, please, if I get the details wrong, kindly forgive me. He wanted to speak to the market women. He wanted to speak to the farmers in the language they will understand. We saw what happened then. His popularity rose. He was able to communicate with his people. So let me just say yes to that. You have my vote on that. And I'm hoping the state will take this seriously, that the indigenous language is important. They must find a way of exposing the children to it, but it doesn't mean that they will cancel English language. No, I'm not saying that. English language may then be the second language. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have 4 hands up. I don't know if you want to take 2 questions at a time in case other people.
Let me suggest that if they can quickly all ask the questions at the same time, then I'll respond to them.
To all of them. Great.
Yes,
wonderful.
I'll do that.
Thank you. So we're going to ask Bolade Thomas. Please go ahead with your question. If you can keep it succinct, we'll really appreciate that. We've asked you to unmute.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, please? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. I've always been very passionate about education. And of course, like the Bible says, that my people perish for lack of knowledge. So my question is, why can't we reintroduce history back to schools? Take it back into the school curriculum, because the children, they need to know their past. I mean, at least they live in the present, and the past definitely will shape their future. So I'm thinking that we need to find a way of bringing this history back to school so that the children are not manipulated by other people who want to see things their own way. And of course, also, like you rightly said, this had been my problem. The second question, I'm sorry, is that why can't we make Pidgin English, the lingua, franca for most of us to communicate as people, instead of saying, okay, learn Yoruba, learn Igbo, learn this, we are distance. I'm not saying they shouldn't learn their various languages. I said the language for us to use to communicate will be Pidgin English. Let's develop Pidgin English. Wherever you are in Nigeria, you can communicate with Pidgin English. So let's find a way of actually developing it to fit into the system. Thank you very much.
Thank you. iPad, if you could please rename yourself so that we know who you are. It's one of our ways of guarding against hackers. So I'm going to call on Mr. Idowu Akinleye to please go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll take, yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Prof. Thank you very much for coming on this forum. My question has to do with a lot of brain drain from Nigeria. It looks like a whole lot of brilliant people are abroad. And it seems to me like as we are abroad, we are able to actually see what is happening in the abroad. It's like you are really on the light, and you shed that light on the country, and you are able to see the darkness, the movement of atrocity, where progress can be made. So the question is, what do we do with majority of us abroad who know the best, who want to do the best for the country? Shall we all go back home, or shall we all continue to do what we can do from this location? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anthony, please go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon, everybody. The question I have is regarding the professor's position on the election. I wish he got himself involved in the election, because most of the things we're discussing here have to do with, something so fundamental for our progress. So would you please try to, get involved with the election? Because all this is we're discussing, if we don't have somebody who could be in charge correctly, then none of this is going to come to fruition. So I just want to suggest that you should get yourself involved, with the situation with the election, so we could, make some progress with respect to your ideas. That's what I got to say with that.
Thank you. Prof, we have 5 more hands up. Do you want to take this group, or should I just keep taking?
Go on.
Keep
I'll
going.
take.
Okay. Sheka continue.
Continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chris Amaji.
Okay. Good evening, Prof. Thank you so much. My name is Chris Amaji. Okay, Prof, my question goes back to, I'm always passionate about education in Nigeria. And the recent trend I have seen is becoming clear to me that there's so much depletion in the terms of the kind of graduates we're producing and the things happening in the educational system. So my question goes like this, sir. What can we do to make sure that the kind of values that will produce the kind of graduates that will govern the nation are being inculcated? Because it's becoming clear to us that the people leading us today, they once passed through our educational system. They became graduates, but they didn't become the kind of people that were anticipated. So how can we put in these values to their hearts of the young people right now, that by tomorrow, if they occupy any position, they can be able to stand tall? That is number one. Then number two, it is the part of the transition from schooling to education. Because it's obvious there's a difference between school and education. So many people leave school, but they stop education. So how do we now, that will still concentrate the part that you are out of school, but education is a lifetime journey? How can we get that done in Nigeria? That's my question, sir.
Thank you. And then we have Omadile Boyo. Please go ahead. I believe it's Mr. Boyo. Please go ahead with your question.
Yes. Medical doctor. Yes, thank you very much, our speaker. Concerning the use of language in business and in maybe House of Assembly and promotion of the use of our native tongue. The problem is that with about 400 languages in this country, that could be a Herculean task.
How long are you there?
I think Pastor's voice is interrupted. Okay, that could be a Herculean task. And I give an example. I speak Ishekiri, very closely related to Yoruba, but yet the differences are enormous in some places. And so getting textbooks and get some of the languages are still at their primordial level and not well developed. And some of them will have not been developed at all. And many are at different stages of development in our languages in terms of science, scientific words, and getting them up to par with some other languages, like the Hausa language, heavily, highly developed Yoruba. And so I just wonder how we'll cope with published publications and also relating with other tribes in the country. So by the time the Yoruba language is explaining computer, explaining internet and all kinds of things like that, and then you school here, and then maybe you're an Igbo person in school in this place, and you now go back home or you go on youth service to the north, how do you communicate? And instead, I would like to adopt what our sister said about developing in Nigerian English. I would like to call it pidgin. I think we have gone so far in affecting the English language like the Americans have done. We can also further scientifically, English may not be seen as science, but yes, there is a scientific part of linguistics that we can really get in Nigerian language adopted and speak. Because over the years, we have noticed that there are so many words we now have that we speak in Nigeria that is not even British English or American English, And this thing don't do, I don't tire, this wahala, all kinds of things like that. So what hope can there be in developing a Nigerian English? Finally, sir, I know I'm taking too much time. Finally, sir, you talk so much about the church and the mosque, I never heard you bringing these two vital institutions to play in correcting the lapses you spoke about. You only mentioned them, and in correcting what role, we have an institute in Ibadan, in those states, at A levels. I used to pass through one institute called Institute of Church and Society. Mm-hmm. I don't know how these two institutions can be, I don't want to use the word revived, can be impacted upon to de-emphasize some of those corrupting influences, like we're talking about money, and we now look at the Yoruba word, the Yoruba and principles of Omoluabi. They're not even being promoted by the church and the mosque. And these Omoluabi principles are both in Islam and Christianity. I mean, instead of us finding the common grounds, I'm not saying all Muslims should become Christians or Christians become Muslims, but there are some things, norms, mores in our culture that we should get the church, and they are proved by the scriptures, you get the church and the mosque to promote that. If you come back home, for instance, and you have stolen money, you should be rejected by the church and not be invited to open a cathedral. You should be resisted. I don't use the word rejected. You should be, even the word resist may be too strong, should be identified as having done wrong. Not after you have worked so hard and then you have also eaten so much money, the church now makes you a kind of, it gives you an honorific title. So that's my question. Those are my questions.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Boyo. We're going to we have three more, sir.
Why don't you let me respond first,
okay.
And then
we'll take the rest.
Yes. I do not know how you and Pastor Itua have sort of managed to get this caliber of people. Oh my God. I just feel like coming in and jumping in and we'll sit down to talk. You know, I'm tempted as you're talking and as they're asking questions that we and this may be a project for Pastor Itua and his NGO, that we may need to, you know, if you want to produce what I'll probably call a manual for, you know, nation building, I'll be happy to participate in it. And what I have in mind here is to come up with a document that will look like a constitution that Nigeria may want to debate. You know, the first thing that I want to consider in that, given my experience and knowledge, and at least the little I know, the three largest groups in Nigeria, the Yorubas, the Igbos, the Hausa Fulanis, we are going to ban them from participating actively in politics, in being chosen to be president, to be whatever it is. The three groups, those who claim to be members of these three groups. And that the minorities, and they will probably be close to almost 380 something. We will do it in such a way that in electing those who lead us and those who are going to reform Nigeria, they are going to come from these groups of people. I will explain that later on, maybe as I return to some of these questions. Because if you look at nation building in a lot of places, people sat down to look at their problems and the issues and so on. Who doesn't know that the problem Nigeria is faced with here today, the problem we are dealing with, whether we're talking about election or we're talking about these things or so, we can lay the problems and the issues and put them together and know fully well that until we resolve the crisis that is connected with these three largest groups, where that Nigeria is not going to see peace. I am bold to say what I'm saying. I am not a politician. I'm a scholar. Maybe I will explain myself later on, but let me try to respond to all these questions. And that informs, my attitude informs what Mr. Anthony, the fourth question is asking me to comment on an election. I have deliberately and sincerely said no, because I have serious problems with the experiment that we are all trying to do. But let me get back to I hope I'll be able to cover the question. The first, relating to introduction of history, my understanding is that the government has brought it back. So you are right that they should not have removed it. History is very important. It shapes not only people's understanding of who they are, but it's a reflection of the kinds of consciousness that that has guided us as a country. So I quite agree with you that history should be in place, and I think history is in place in a number of places. I don't think making Pidgin English the national lingua franca is the ideal. I think speaking English is spoken widely in certain areas. No, I'm not going to agree that it's spoken in the entire country. I know in the Delta region, in the East, and Pidgin English is quite strong. So I still believe that we may continue to use English as a lingua franca, but we should also try as much as possible to develop other indigenous languages, not just Yoruba, Hausa, and Fulani, or Igbo, but other languages coming from the minority. I agree with the question on brain drain. And what is already happening is that a sizable number of Nigerians who live abroad are coming home to help in, critical interventions that are necessary to keep the system, the educational system going. Just like I said to you, the Institute for Advanced Studies and the Samuel Institute, it came out of that mindset. But in doing that, you also have to recognize that you must include those who are at home. It is not true that our professors at home are not doing their best. Some of the best and the brightest in the world, they are home, they are there. Some who have retired in our universities are there. Look at our ambassadors, who have distinguished themselves, who have retired home. They are doing their best at home. So what is needed is a kind of a cooperative intervention that will be based on, the needs of the people at home, and the educational system also, the interventions that will change things there. I come to Nigeria every year, and I go to the place I know best, which is Ife, where I worked before going to, until the COVID time, I used to go to the classroom to teach. Most of the professors there, or they are my former students and so on. I'll take the chalk from them. They tell me what they're doing, and I teach. And I'm not the only one. Others also do that. So that is a good thing. But the best of the diaspora must recognize what is in place at home. They must know that there are issues. For example, the questions of security. I have come from a town, Ute, as you mentioned, in Ondo State. I've not been able to go home for the past three years because of the problem around there. Even when I want to go at times, people at home will say, well, we know this place is not safe. Why don't you, take caution? And the most unfortunate one was when I was due to go home to participate in what we call the Hero. When you turn 70 around that, you join your colleagues and your mates or people of your age grade to do the Hero festival. I prepared for it. They were expecting me. They wanted me to come. I couldn't go because of security issue. So I just mentioned that the security matter is also important, and members of the diaspora are very much aware of but it is true, given the amount of money they are sending home to their relations, they are contributing majorly to the development of Nigeria. The other question has to do with the kinds of value that are necessary. How do we inculcate them? How do we encourage those values to the youth that will be able to move things forward? It's in the curriculum. We need to change it. We need to change the kinds of things that we teach the kids in the primary school, in the secondary school. Not only in the basic courses like history and also civics, but also in the practice of education itself. There's a problem there, the practice of education. When the principal of a teacher, the principal of a school is not even taking all these things seriously, because the principal, the teacher, all of them, and the teacher are badly paid. Like I mentioned to you earlier on, you're paying 20,000 naira to a graduate. What do you expect? What kinds of teaching and teaching do you expect from such a graduate? When I complained about it some time ago, someone said, oh, there are those of them who are earning 15,000. What are they going to do with it, 15,000, for God's sake? But anyway, that's another issue. And maybe, like I said to you, we may want to think about a larger project that we use will help us. Then I think the last question also has to do with religion. You see, this year will be the 40th anniversary of the departure of my father, who died very young. You will not believe that this man died 45 years ago. 40 years ago. Because he was a good man. He was a good clergy. He did his best. People know him. Everywhere he went, one of the things that helped him was that he was very good in learning languages. So he will learn the dialect of his people. By the second, third year, he is preaching and reading the Bible in Yoruba and using their language, their dialects, to preach. So they will continue to remember him and will continue to remember him. The point I'm trying to make is that if you are ordained and you do not know that there is justice, and that government, and as they say, judgment shall begin from the house of Israel, then you are making a big mistake. You have chosen the wrong profession. So we need to begin from that ethical juncture, even in the training of pastors and so on and so forth, to make it happen. And this, of course, we also apply to the Muslims and to Islam. There must be a way of reorienting the preachers to take seriously the moral, ethical values that are embedded in the tradition that they are teaching others or preaching to others. You must begin to think that, listen, the faith is not just for me to teach, it's also for me to practice. It's a lived religion. We must see in you the beauty of the religion so that we know that you are truly called to serve God. The truth of the matter is that, and I'm sorry to say, we often feel that people call themselves, even though they claim that God has called them. It's not always the case that God called certain people to be priests. I think it's important, but we mustn't think that it is their full responsibility to change the world, to change Nigeria. We must all come together to change Nigeria. The state, the politicians, the pastors, the imams, and so on. It is our responsibility to do it. And we can do it. So maybe I should stop here so we can move forward. I think I've answered. I do not want Mr. Anthony to think that I didn't answer his question. I think I have indirectly answered it. That the issue with election that we're talking about is greater than that. If what you're expecting from me is to tell you who won the election, who did not win the election, I'm not going to say that. That's not what I'm come here to do. But I've given you the larger thing. So when you hear me say that they should ban Yoruba, I'm a Yoruba man, Hausas and Fulani Hausas from even not only contesting elections, but for even, be participating in that kinds of active politics as an experiment, so to say. I don't have enough time to expatiate what I've said. So that this tension, that these three ethnic groups are costing the entire nation, will have to stop. It has to stop. I will say more, but, let me Let me just be quiet here. I can see some of my friends are raising their hands. Okay, thank you.
Sir. Yeah, great words of wisdom. So hopefully it's something that we'll really put into consideration in the next cycle of election. So we have Anuli Olaniyi. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Prof. Pastor Itua, Jumoke, thank you, and all participants, good evening. My name is Anuli. Thank you for the opportunity to learn on this platform, and permit me to please stay off camera. Prof, my first point or question, sir, is what do you think is the realistic and sustainable role of women in education? I ask that because obviously bearing in mind the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria is the highest, in fact, impacting mainly girls. If you transition that into women in careers and in C-suite, it's very low. The number of women in politics is very low, as you'll be able to know. The recent cycle of elections have actually reduced the abysmal number of women even in political representation and the parliament in Nigeria. So when I mean sustainable and realistic, I'm sure you know what I mean by that. And then number two question, sir, is speaking about leadership that we always speak about. How much of this can actually be incorporated into the school curriculum? And I'm speaking from at least secondary school level. I ask that because I'm privileged and opportune to be a teacher of leadership and life skills in a secondary school in Abuja. And my hope and dream by God's special grace is to spread this across not just private schools at the moment, but also to public schools. But sir, the reason why this particular curriculum was seen as needful and developed in this particular school that I'm a teacher in is because the leader of the school, the owner of the school, who is executive director, who is a woman, saw the need for leadership in the school and incorporated this into the curriculum for the students. So as a woman, you know, I would like to understand our position, bearing in mind the societal pressures, societal roles, assigned expectations of women, but still it's not showing up in numbers in positions of authority. And as you know, when we look at role models, we can only count by one hand how many we have for women. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anuli, for that very powerful question. It's like you took it out of the hearts of many women. May I have Mr. Femi Akintunde ask his question, and then we'll have a he, Brima, and then we have one more. We have Mr. Anthony. I'm going to take Mr. Perfect before I take you, since you've already asked the question. So please go ahead, Mr. Femi Akintunde, with your question.
Thank you very much, Jumoke. And good evening, everybody. Thank you, Pastor Itua and Prof. Thank you very much for your time today. My name is Femi Akintunde, as shown, and you've been a very, very good mentor and good family friend to us. Professor Dorcas Banke, the late Banke Akintunde, happens to be the wife to my uncle. Yeah, my question is around the same issue of brain drain. And it's something I would like you to give us some ideas. Is brain drain really supposed to be a blessing or a curse for us? And that's the first question. And I'd like to draw some analogy, which I would like to use to put it in context. Educated youths are seen mostly as the cause of most social vices, especially in our society. Like when you talk of Boko Haram, people will accuse the uneducated youth first, that they don't want education. But the unintended consequences of educated youths that are unemployed seems to be overlooked. That has grave consequences. And I must say that that is even of more serious impact and effect to us than those who are not educated, in my opinion. Now, we now have a situation which presents a contrarian policy to us, where the people that are educated in Nigeria are becoming very attractive resources to other parts of the world. And very recently, one of our lawmakers stood up in the House and was trying to move a motion to constrain or control that. Honestly, it's something that we should not even bother to think about, how somebody like that find his way to the House. And those are the kind of leaders we have. But I'm saying that rather than making an attempt to control or constrain this, we can see it as a very, very unique opportunity and as an advantage that our educated youths are becoming good resources people want outside this place. My question now, Prof, is this. How can we what measures can we put together to harness these resources? Let's ignore those people who are trying to say, stop medical doctors from going out. You can't stop this because you did not pay for their education. It's a free market economy. Everybody should be free to move around like they want because they are the owners of their skill set. But I'm saying, let's look at it in a more positive way. What can we do to harness these resources to the best of our ability to promote and support our national development, both in terms of social and economic prosperity? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would have Mr. Ehi Brahima. Please go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Jumoke, and thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Great to see you again, and Pastor Ituah Ighodalo. I've been listening for more than 1 hour, and I think I feel so excited that we should have more of this kind of engagements. What I've listened to so far has to do with education, leadership, and nation building. You know, I will just say that a lot of people are giving up hope, you know, on the country, especially young people. But we all have a duty, a responsibility in our little spaces to play our parts, no matter how small. When the society begins to fail, I'll try and keep it very brief because really I want more of these engagements again. I mean, another session. When the society begins to fail, we're all partly guilty. That's the truth. Now, let us take leadership and how we have failed with selecting the right leaders. I listened to Prof banning Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo people. Well, that could be a very drastic way of looking at how to select or elect our leaders. Because if the old system is not working, why don't you try something fresh? Now, I just shock you. In spite of the bad things going on, or the people we believe are not helping our situation, especially the politicians, and then the military. The military created this problem for us in Nigeria, this leadership crisis. And the politicians too are all helping themselves. Now, our president is outside Nigeria right now. Medical tourism. For 8 years, one would have expected that something, you know, in that sector, health sector would have been done. But everybody goes abroad on medical tourism. What we spend every year on education and tourism will shock you. That's number one. Number two, we have good people in Nigeria. And with a population of over 200 million people, we shouldn't give up. What we need to achieve is that what we are doing now, this engagement, we should try and win more converts and achieve a critical mass. I see what Pastor is doing with this Leadership Development Center, the NGO. It is great. We have, I am passionate for a Nigeria that works for everybody, for all of us. My next book is How Nigeria Can Conquer the World. And we also are launching what I call Proudly Nigeria, made in Nigeria for the world, looking at the non-oil sector. We have a lot of potentials, but we need to continue to engage like this, tell our stories strongly, using different platforms, both at home and abroad. The people that are doing great things all over the world, majority of them are Nigerians. But our politicians are not helping us. And we need to really engage them, fight them. A senator earns about 12 million naira a month. Now, let me shock you. Taraba State, a very poor state in Nigeria, with just 18 days to go, the governor and his ex-co, they have approved 2 billion naira to buy cars for himself, his deputy, and their wives. That doesn't make sense to anybody. So these are the problems we need to confront our leaders, challenge them without being violent. You know, we should use every means possible to really wrestle down these people because they are enemies of Nigeria, whether we like it or not. So I was just trying to make it very brief. For education, a lot of brain drain, but at the end of the day, it will be a benefit for all of us. So when they go, they will benefit by what I call reverse migration. So let me just stop at that one. Then finally, I would just say that there are some Nigerians that have done very well. The MD of Bank of Industry has done X. It does not run that place like a typical Nigerian CEO. What about the professor at JAMB? He also turned that place around. So it means, or was it when he was at NATI for 5 years as executive secretary and CEO? So we have great Nigerians who can do great things even within what we call a challenging environment. So I want to say a big thank you to Prof. Mine was just to make some comments, not to ask questions, and to thank Pastor, to say that we should continue to engage, even here and outside of this forum. If we have a similar program, we call it Niger Times, which is our newspaper, Niger Times Diaspora Conversations. We're going to have a third one on the 20th of this month. The topic is cultural transformation, the imperative for national development. So we need to, in our own little spaces, let us do different things to engage different audiences, both at home and abroad, and continue to tell our stories. And I'm sure Nigeria will become better for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we would definitely like to engage you. So please, there's a form in the chat room on how to engage ALG so that we'll have your contact information. Would appreciate that, Mr. Ahi, if you can go ahead and send us your contact information, or you can just even put it in the chat room. Prof, I'm going to read a question from the chat room and then we'll take the last two. This is, I believe, Ms. Bumi Lawson. She has the thank you, Prof. If you were Minister of Education charged with transforming the Nigerian education system as a whole, where would be your area of priority? What age range and what specifically would you change, especially given the rapid transformation of technology and artificial intelligence? So that is, let me just be sure that there isn't another one in there. That's her question. And then we can take Mr. Perfect, or I have another hand that just went up. At some point, we'll probably take this last 3 hands that are up. So do you want me to just take those questions so that we'll close the questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Mr. Perfect, please go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Prof. And I hope one day I will also add Prof to my my name is Uju. Mr. Perfect.
Your sound, we can't hear you. Your sound is going in and out.
Can you hear me?
It's cracking. So if you are in, maybe you can turn off your video so that we can take the next one. Your sound is really poor.
Okay, how about now?
Okay, yes. And if would appreciate if you can keep it brief too.
Okay, yeah. Quick ones. I observe that the students, when it comes to education, there are different means of educating people. Now, I found that she was singing this popular secular, and then I thought about it. Our educational system, where we teach with what the students are familiar with, can't we teach leadership in form of arts, where each schools or department whereby writes a script of a solution to a particular topic. They rehearse the script as a stage play and then they present it. That way we are also teaching ourselves and not just waiting for the top politician. I feel it's a way of providing solution and not just waiting for one person to bring it. Because sometimes, in fact, most times when there are some political people who are in office, we expect them to do the needful. They don't even have the idea. They are just put there based on this person knows this person, or this person's father has done this and they want to compensate. At the end of the day, it all boils down to them just messing everything up. Now, if graduates, students goes for competition, let's say for instance leadership, and then they are made to a stage play concerning where everybody watch, that way we get to learn from ourselves, even if it is entrepreneurship or maybe our Nigerian solution. What do you think solution to Nigeria should be? That way we can also learn from each other and providing solutions. Because for me, I'm tired of this country because it's as if we are just recycling. In fact, I even tell people we have to go back to our future, because I feel we've used our future and now we are just using the past now, because on the normal day, the future is expected to be better than past. And then when I check our history, we've had a time that is very, very good compared to where we are now. So for us to go back to that future, I think we have to start doing things the way they were doing it then. Maybe they modernize it for us to achieve something good.
Thank you. Thank you for your question or comments. May we have Mr. Olutayo Adeshina? So I'm sorry if I call you a Mr. or a Miss, because it doesn't have your title as part of your name, and I can't see whether you're male or female. So apologies for that. Go ahead.
No problem at all. Good evening, sir. I thank Professor Olupona for this wonderful lecture. And I also thank Professor Ighodalo for actually putting this together. I'd like to say that Professor Olupona has been teaching me since Form 2. So it's always nice. It's always nice to re-engage with him. But I'd like to disagree with him on his recommendation that the 3 major ethnic groups.
Oh my God. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
I know. What I was just trying to say is that if you are promoting the minorities to a higher status, then of course you will understand what they mean by the tyranny of the minority. May we not have that one. But basically what I'm trying to say is that the problem with us is not with either the major ethnic groups or the minor ethnic groups. It's with people. Oh, you want to change the constitution several times? It's not the constitution, it's the people. And so the recommendation then is, what do we do with the people? I teach at home, and yes, occasionally I go abroad, but my destiny is stuck with Nigeria, so to speak. And I have tried as much as possible to understand the Nigerian conundrum. I will teach students every day, and you see the disinterestedness. We talk to university management, and you see the anarchy in administration. And so the problem then is, how do we get out of this problem? Well, I would recommend the Napoleonic approach. When Napoleon became the Emperor of France, he said, look, let's start afresh. So he began from what we call the primary schools to train the new French people. In the case of Nigeria today, there is nothing you do, anything short of caning them, of shooting people. There is not much that is likely to change. And so, yes, this leadership forum is good. Several others that they have suggested, yes, all these are good. But the question, the major question is, what is the ideology driving anything? You cannot be talking every day. You cannot be forming groups. There has to be an ideology that must drive this process. the problem. So if you create this group, we create that group, we do it here, we do it there. What we are recreating is the Tower of Babel. Nigeria is the new Tower of Babel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we are definitely up on the hour. It's 10:57. Mr. Anthony, 30 seconds to please make your comment because you've spoken before, 30 seconds, so that we can have Prof close. Thank you.
Yeah, still muted, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, okay, I just got it. Thank you for allowing me this. I wanted to just say this because where do I start? So the issue, why I mentioned the election, is because in my view, the aggregate of these ideas of how Nigeria changes, decentralization, changing the constitution, all that. The reason, first of all, I'm not Igbo. I'm not saying that I'm not obedient. I'm for the Peter Obi per se. Here's why. I've been studying Nigeria very, very profoundly. This election is very critical to all these discussions. As a starting point, is the low-hanging fruit. The preponderance of Nigerians that were disenfranchised before they collected the voters' card. That's the population. Then to get the card, they couldn't even get the card. That's another population. Then it came to an election. As bad as Nigeria is, and look at what is happening. So if we don't focus on getting this election right, we're lost as a country. Because look at what happened in the last 8 years. We had a president for going to UK for medical treatment. We have another one going to France. So please,
Uncle
let's
Anthony,
focus on the
can I
election.
please, do you mind if I cut you in? I'm really sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't mind to cut you in. I don't want us to make this about election, where it's about education, and I'm sure we'll have another forum where we can really talk about elections. So apologies for really cutting you in. I have one more question, sir, and then maybe you can take all those questions. This is from the YouTube. This is from the YouTube watchers. And the question that Yetunde Ayola Davis has is, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read it here. City and Guilds College can be reestablished as well as the technical colleges. After all, most of the universities here in the UK were first technical colleges. So I think the question is, how can this be reestablished? If I'm getting that, maybe it's just the way it was written. Okay, so that's the last question, sir. Did you get the one from Yetunde? I believe she's trying to ask how the City and Guilds colleges can be reestablished and how the technical colleges can be reestablished as well.
Okay.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Let me try to respond to this last set of questions. And I'll start with Ms. Anoli's very, very fascinating question on the role of women, particularly leadership role. And you are absolutely correct that women are central to national development. I recall my interaction with even my own grandmother in, in Okigbo, where I was born and where I grew up. And the conversations sort of made lasting impact on me, both in terms of later in my life and then also in my career. It is very sad that I think the only time some of the religious leaders came together in Senate to debate an issue was I think a bill that concerns women. I think you all remember that. It was defeated and they couldn't move forward with it. I don't think I have an answer as to how we are going to solve this problem. It has to do with almost an odd combination of cultural tenets that are not connected with even the practice of religion. And so we also need to involve religious leaders in this conversation on how best we are going to find a way of making sure that the role of women is recognized, and how we need to get them involved in the task of nation building. And then what I said earlier on about families, the status and what we do within our families, and how we train our girls and how we train our boys vis-a-vis, the girls, I think will go a long way to correct these anomalies. But I 100% agree with you that we have a very important role to play in making sure that this is changed. Isn't it also the case that in terms of the statistics of the numbers of students in schools today, is the case that women occupy a very, very important place in that. And we need to make sure that we factor the things that, issues that concern them into how we develop the programs and how we live our lives. Femi's Akitude, thank you, Femi. It's always sad to, anytime we remember your in-law and the role she played as a professor at UI. But the good thing is that she left behind good memories that we are all proud of. Yes, you're right that brain drain is an issue, and it has significant consequences on the nation's educational system. But then I also agree with you that we have a unique opportunity to use it to address some of the crises that we have. And a number of our colleagues are also doing that. It's not just it's just not professors who are returning home to teach in our universities, but also medical doctors who are constantly going home to participate in difficult surgery. They're going to our teaching hospitals. And I think we need to do more, perhaps also find a way of institutionalizing it so that it will be a way of also not only giving back, but assuring that the system, ultimately will not collapse. But I must also say, as I said earlier on, you also need to put in place certain things. If you do not have strong security, it's going to be difficult to bring them. You know what I'm talking about. There are cases of Nigeria who came home to start new things, to do new things, and the result, of course, was not good. And people are talking about this. A lot of people are scared. They want to come home. The truth of the matter is that, in a normal situation, who wants to stay here in this terrible weather, this cold weather and winter? If they know they can come home and do other things and enjoy visiting their people and so, but there are circumstances beyond their control. So we have to have a strong state that ensures the, the security of citizens. We can say that for now. We are not, you know what I'm talking about. A case where people are kidnapped and at times killed, and nothing happens after that. So that is a problem. So we are hoping that, by God's grace, we'll have a renewed Nigeria where all these issues of insecurity will probably come to an end. But I agree with you that they have a role to play. They have a very important role to play in national development. They are well positioned to do that, and most of them want to. That's what I know about at least the cross of the educated ones and those who are professionals that I have interacted with. My friend Brian's comments are, taken seriously. I think you are right that the reverse migration, as we call it, may also, help. And I agree with you that, like I said much earlier, that we have to look at the best practices. We also know that even in the area of education, in commerce, in the banking system, there are Nigerians who are doing very, very good jobs. I'm glad you mentioned Professor Oloyede, who is in charge of JAM. That's a very important citation. Who is so I think the next important question is from Bumi Lawson, who asked me that if I'm put in charge of education, what to be my priority? I'm going to say that the three main areas of primary, secondary, and the university are all connected. They're very important, but I will do it in such a way that one will know that it's responsible also to the other. In the system here, we get our undergraduates during the summer, they go to the secondary schools to teach, to do stuff, to carry out different things. So the three are connected. The way, this is structured right now in Nigeria is not the best. But I think the three are very important, but we must also emphasize the primary. Primary is where you catch them young, where you get them into the IT, you teach them values, you teach them, what it means to be Nigerians. It's a process of indoctrination. Like I mentioned, the case of my son, when he was, in his primary school here, where he was taught how to be a good citizen, how to see himself as an American, and how to know the importance of the Constitution, and so on and so forth. Mr. Perfect, the questions on leadership, I agree with you. How arts can, play a role. I mentioned earlier in my conversation that the process of nation building is so important that we have to bring to bear that every available resources, arts is important, music, and so on and so forth. And I think even in my conversation, I cited a particular tune that I thought was able to convey to us vividly the ethos of national development and and citizenship. Yes, Professor Adeshina, thank you for the personal introduction. When I talked about the three ethnic groups, I'm trying to be very metaphoric. I'm trying to, I don't mean that physically. I'm trying to be very, because some of the issues and the conversations sort of revolve around these three major ethnic groups. And so we have to understand that there's something to that. Let me also mention something that you may not know. If the head of state during the Nigerian Civil War, if the head of state had come from any of these three ethnic groups, what happened after that, in the process of reconciliation and so on that happened after the Civil War, would not have happened. The result would have been different. I don't want to go into details. But the fact that we had General Gowon, who was a young man, who was in charge of the of Nigeria at that time, and was actually the one that presided over what happened after the Civil War, made a lot of difference in the outcome of it. We failed as a nation to talk about the Nigerian Biafran Civil War. And this is part of the problem that we are faced with. We asked some of the soldiers, or some of the technicians and the professors who contributed, who participated in the Civil War, to come to University of Nigeria, Nsukka, thinking that that was going to be a chance for us to move forward. I went to Nsukka after the Civil War. I was in Awolowo Hall. My hall faced the physics department, where some of these brains were brought. What happened after that? Did we do anything about that? We remained a nation that failed to learn from the Civil War. I can say that authoritatively. Most nations moved on after their, such wars to become great, particularly technologically. We failed because of ethnic and religious chauvinism that failed that. Pastor Itua, you are provoking me. You are provoking me. Anyway, thank you for giving me the opportunity. One other question is that the reason why we are here talking about this is that there are no punishments for people who offend the state. I'll put it that way. There are no punishments. If you know that, you can steal billions and get away with it, why won't you steal it? There are no checks and balances that will ensure that we behave ourselves. That's the issue. And that's the problem. Right now, all over the world, particularly I know in America here, where the questions of sexual harassment has become very important, they have tightened up everything. You know that if you make unnecessary pass at a student or whatever it is, a female student, and you're not supposed to do that, you are going to be punished. You are going to be heavily punished. You will lose your job. So this is the if you like, crime and punishment, if you want to call it that. We have failed as a country to take ourselves seriously, to take our constitution seriously, and we have messed up even the judiciary. It's very difficult for people to even, believe in it. And I think the last question is talking about technical education. What she's trying to say is that we need to realize the importance of technical education, which we kind of do not take seriously too. It's because we believe so much in this paper certificate. You find a name, you have list of degrees, BA, MA, MSc, then you put in the LLB, he's going to do law again, and then he's out of it. And what kinds of nonsense is this? So what do you expect from such a system? So what I think Yetunde is saying to us is that we need to go back to this. We need to get our hands dirty. We need to know the importance of technical education. Entrepreneurship is fine, but I think we need to do more than that. I believe I've covered all the questions, and I want to thank you most sincerely for giving me the opportunity to participate in this conversation. And I believe I have tried my best, at least to the best of my ability, not to disappoint my cousin. And I'm very proud of this program. I mean, what we are doing here on this program, and I can assure you, I will be joining in the near future to just listen to what our fellow citizens are saying. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I think we're going to bring on, okay, he's back in now, Mr. Go ahead, sir.
My dear cousin and prof, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
This program has gone on for 2 hours, 20 minutes. Goes to show how much Jumoke in particular enjoyed the session. She's smiling like she stole the candy. Yeah, it goes to show how much people really enjoyed the conversation and how blessed they were. And if we didn't stop, they'll still be asking questions. So thank you very, very much for coming. And thank you for being who you are. Your scholarliness, your love for Nigeria, your being extremely accommodating, our love and our relationship, and for being a very, very good Okegbo man. I think that is the best thing about you.
Oh, you should say Ute or what? Don't let my people disown me. Thank you.
You know, both of us are half caste, half and half.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
If you do know of anybody that can join this conversation, either in the diaspora or locally here, or even Americans, non-Nigerians that you think in your interaction across the world, they can join the conversation. What we're trying to do is to get all manners of opinions, ideas. I mean, what you suggested today about let the 3 major tribes just step aside a little bit. I think I'm not taking it as an allegory. I'm taking it as a serious comment, a very, very serious comment, because that might just bring about some kind of relief. At least let them step aside for a few years. Maybe 10 years or 15 years or 2 cycles of elections, then we can readmit them. I think it might be an idea. It might calm the polity down. The polity is a bit overheated. But knowing Nigerians now, they will just start switching the states they came from, claiming other states and blah, blah, blah. And the Fulani man will suddenly say that he has some Igbira root somewhere and he says he's an Igbira man. But that's Nigeria for you. But for me, it's a very fresh approach. And so on and so on. We had somebody on this platform who once said maybe we should annex Niger and annex Togo and annex Dahomey and expand Nigeria instead of making it smaller. Different kinds of ideas that we're trying to bring to the fore to see how we can walk this Nigerian nation forward, or at least make there the opportunity for the masses and people who do not have the opportunity to express themselves. So thank you very much. I will be picking on you, picking your brain, asking for your contacts to help us develop and deepen this further, and hope that we can together transform Nigeria. I know that you and I still have 1 or 2 small things outstanding. We will deepen that, and I'll see how best to make it happen. Just know that I'm in your corner, and anything you really like me to do, I will be very, very happy to do it. And we can take it on from there. So thank you. Greet my auntie for me, and my aburos. Tell them we love them very much, and that they shouldn't become American citizens. They should.
No. My kids come to Nigeria. They're very passionate about Nigeria.
That's what we want.
Before Prof goes, he said he would like us to create something like a constitution from ALG for Nigerians, like what we would like to do in Nigeria. So I think we should take him up on that too.
What I'm trying to say is that I think I'm so excited about this conversation. And I know from this conversation, a manual, can emerge, a manual relating to a manual that will give us some of the basics, the ABCs of national development or nation building. That's possible. I think just listening to the questions, and I hope you are keeping the tapes and you're keeping the conversation, the transcripts of the conversation. That's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, we're keeping each one of them, and we're hoping to turn them into compendiums or series of compendiums, or at least the high points of each conversation to help develop a Nigeria manual, you call it, or roadmap or something.
Something like that.
So, and you can see that from our conversation with you, there have been some notable quotes that we have been developing, and I must thank Jumoke and her team for that. And please help me to thank Jumoke very much. She's a real powerhouse of this whole thing. And Joan and Lara and Pastor Tayo, they are phenomenal people, and I've really been blessed to have a great team. I want to thank them all. And Shade from South Africa. The only person I won't thank is Olu Victor. He's a very troublesome man. But I forgive him because I love him so much.
I think that
he's a lovely man.
He's a lovely man. He's really been a burden bearer for me. And he's really sorted me out in many places. Thank you so much, Prof.
All right, thank you. Take
good care. Greet Biden for me. And tell Trump that he shouldn't come back to American White House. Right. Next week, we're having a young guy, Hyundai. Somebody commented here that we seem to be not giving enough attention to the young folks. So those comments. So David Hyundai is going to be our guest next week, and he's going to be talking about new journalism in nation building. New journalism in nation building, so that we can see the role of the fifth realm of the Republic in our great nation. Have they been positive? Have they been negative? Have they been on the sidelines? What are they doing right or wrong? And what can they do better? And how can we get a better nation? So please, let's spread the news. Let's tell people, let people know. Let's all be on the platform. Let's join the conversation, and let's see where Nigeria is going. Also, the other group that I am president of, the Rebuild Nigeria Initiative, is going to be having conversations on peace, the peace dialogue for Nigeria. They focus on peace. They focus on developing coalitions and cooperations and how to get all the warring factors of Nigeria together so that we can truly chart the course of a great nation. So very soon, before the end of this month, by the 26th or the 29th, they will be having a conversation, 26th, on peace and the peace dialogue. We would like to invite everybody on ALG because we're also part of that conversation.
It's 25th.
25th.
No, it's the 26th. It's Friday the 26th.
Friday 26th.
He's going to have his own platform.
He's going to have his own platform Friday the 26th. We're going to be looking at peace dialogues in Nigeria in collaboration with ALG and a few other organizations to build the bridges and bring about peace building in Nigeria as a basis for nation building. That really is the focus of the Rebuild Nigeria Initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. God bless you. Have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. My name remains Itwa Olajide Ighodalo. Thank you. God bless you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.